Dar Chapter 21, in the Pine Forest. Dar moved with the fast lope of the muskox hunters as he left the valley and started for home. He felt differently about himself. He was not the same person who had entered Torig's camp 12 days ago. He knew he had learned a great deal there, but at the same time, he felt his learning had just begun. That was it. He had made a beginning. Dar remembered singing the yew tree song on first entering the camp. He realized he had sung the song not only to warn the new clan of his presence, but to give himself courage. The trip home would be long and lonely. He might have to sing the song again before he returned to his own clan. Along the way, Dar found enough edible plants to keep him fed, and he caught an occasional rabbit. The spear thrower remained in his shoulder pouch. When he came to Bone Lake, he took the long way around. His journey had almost ended there, but he had learned some useful things from the experience. He slept on piles of leaves at night and built windbreaks when cold winds blew. Dar thought of what Seelan had said about observing the muskoxen, and he began to look closely at the smaller animals around him. How could he carve the prickled fur of a hedgehog? How far apart were a rabbit's eyes? How big was a beaver's tail in proportion to its body? He carved them all in his mind. After 9 days of hard walking, Dar entered the pine forest as the sun was going down. In the fading light, he took his knife and carved his clan's man mark on 3 of the pine trunks. Seelan had told him Torig would not have come into his clan's territory if these marks had been there before. Dar was glad the forest had been unmarked, and that Torig had entered it and Dar's life. Dar skinned the rabbit he had caught earlier and spitted it over a small fire. As night fell, he relaxed in the territory of his own clan and waited for his meal to cook in the sputtering flames. His tranquil mood did not last long. He was startled to hear footsteps moments before a large man loomed above him, and Keenock's angry voice rang out, "Where have you been? Your grandmother thinks you're dead." Dar rose to face his uncle. "I'm very much alive," he said in a resolute voice. Keenock stepped close to Dar. "I said, where have you been?" Dar spoke slowly, emphasizing every word. "I went to the stranger's camp to trade my sunstone for his spear thrower." Keenock glared at him. "How could you do such a stupid thing? And how could you leave without telling me? Mora knew where you went, didn't she?" "Yes, grandmother knew, but don't blame her. I asked her not to tell anyone," Dar said, his voice rising. "I'm an adult now. I don't need your permission any longer." Keenock's eyes were hard. "It's not a question of asking for permission. You should have told me where you were going. You knew I wouldn't like your plan, but I could not have forbidden it. You say you're an adult, but you kept your trip a secret, like a child." Dar knew from the feeling in the pit of his stomach that Keenock was right, but he was too angry to admit it now. Fist clenched, they stood opposite each other in the forest clearing. Keenock bit off his words. "You don't seem to understand that my job has been to prepare you to be a man." Dar's eyes locked with Keenock's. "That's what fathers do, and you're not my father." "You're right. I'm not your father." Keenock spoke with fury and stepped closer to Dar. "And you're not my son. You've resented me for trying to teach you what you must know. You've refused to learn from me." "You haven't acted like a father to me." Dar was embarrassed to find his voice choking up. "You've never even liked me." "What's that got to do with it?" Keenock shot back. "You've been my responsibility, one I didn't want, but I've kept you safe. You've never been hungry, never been without clothes or shelter." Dar felt his heart pounding. "Grandmother has done this for me. She makes the meals I eat, the clothes I wear. She even made the tent we live in." Keenock slowly shook his head. "You have a wise and strong grandmother, but she also has needs. I'm her only living son, and I have commitments to you both. Don't you see, Dar? Mora made the tent. I provided the skins." Dar heard a new tone in Keenock's voice, and his own voice softened. "Perhaps you're right. You've cared for me for years, in place of my father." Keenock stepped back and unclenched his fists. "I loved your father, Dar. He was more than a brother to me. He was my deepest friend, and I failed him. I failed the test. I could not save him from the spirit cat. Dar moved close to Keenock. You didn't fail the spirit test. There was no test. The animal that killed my father was real. Keenock looked startled. What are you talking about? Who told you that? Grandmother's brother, Seelan, Dar said. Keenock's eyes opened wide as if he could not take in all this new information. Seelan? Seelan there? Not dead? The words came out like drum beats. No, Dar echoed the rhythm of his uncle's words. Alive, crippled, a carver, and respected for it. With the anger drained out of them, Dar and Keenock sat on the ground by the fire. Keenock leaned forward to listen as Dar told him the story of Seelan. A remarkable old man, Keenock said when Dar stopped speaking. Keenock took a deep breath. Now, tell me what Seelan said about the spirit creature. Uncle, it's not a spirit creature. Their clan calls it a dagger-toothed cat. Nobody has seen one since Seelan's been there, but the old hunters used to talk about the cat to Seelan. It's still part of the clan's legends and ceremonies. Keenock frowned. Perhaps Seelan is right in the animals of this world. Perhaps not. Keenock turned away from the subject abruptly. Tell me about the stranger and his clan. Dar talked about Torag and the ways of his people, and Keenock heard the story with intense interest. He asked so many questions that Dar went on to tell him about the spear thrower, Torag's skill, and his own struggle to master the antler rod. Dar had never spoken so freely or at such length to his uncle. When he finished, Keenock said, Let me see the spear thrower you went so far to get. Dar took the rod out of his shoulder pouch and handed it to Keenock. Seelan made this. Keenock held the spear thrower close to the light of the fire and turned it over and over in his hands. This is beautiful, Dar. Seelan got me started working with bone, antler, and ivory, and he helped me make flint carving tools to take home. I watched him make a wonderful ivory bracelet for grandmother. Dar took it out of his waist pouch, handed it to Keenock, and took back the spear thrower. As they talked, Keenock traced the design on the bracelet with his fingertips. Seelan taught me to think like a carver, Dar said. He paused and then spoke in an assured voice he did not know he possessed. That's what I'm going to be. Keenock shifted his position and his voice regained its edge. What about hunting? I'll do that too. A man must hunt, Dar said. Keenock looked relieved. Dar paused before continuing. But I did consider staying with Seelan and his clan. Keenock raised his eyebrows. His clan? Yes. They are his people now. His sons and grandsons all bear that clan's man mark on their cheeks. Keenock grew thoughtful. You liked it there, Dar. Seelan and Torag were good to you. What made you decide to return? Yes, they were good to me. But I had a choice and Seelan didn't. He couldn't walk home. I thought about the sons I may have someday and their sons. I want them all to carry our man mark on their arms. Keenock looked intently at Dar. Your father speaks through you. Keenock had never linked him to his father before, and Dar felt tears in his eyes. In the low, flickering light, Dar thought Keenock's eyes were also wet. Dar remembered the rabbit and removed it from the fire. He took out his knife and cut the overcooked meat into 2 pieces. Share my meal. We'll be home by tomorrow noon, and the food will be better there. Keenock smiled. I hope so. He returned the bracelet to Dar and reached for his charred portion of rabbit. They ate in comfortable silence until Keenock tossed his last bone into the fire. Tomorrow I want you to show me how the spear thrower works, if it works. Dar nodded and found himself nervously humming the yew tree song under his breath. Courage. Keenock winced with pain as he stretched out beside the fire to sleep. Dar started to question him about his wound, but Keenock held up his hand to silence him. No more talk, Dar. We need sleep.